Very chilly day today. Started about -1, peaked at about 2. I was out on the Genesis bike, steel framed, 3 years old, and still going strong, enjoying it. Got my pogies from 45 North on there, and they kept my hands really warm with these thinner gloves on. They don't seal you in, obviously, because if you fell off and your hands were stuck in there, it'd be trouble, but the fact you've got those kind of buckets to get your hands in inside the hoods makes a massive difference. I find myself keep wanting to quickly whip my hands in when it's really cold. And they go on from the bottom. So you pull on like a elasticated thing there that then hooks over the top, the whole lobster claw popping on. Took with me a thermos of coffee I made in the morning in my AeroPress, and this was a Spatz thermos. It did the job. Struggling with the lid here because I've got my gloves on, but it was great. After about 2.5 hours it was still warm, and in fact if I put boiling water in there earlier in the morning as well, it would have stayed warmer longer because I put the coffee into a cold thermos. So that's the bike, check. This was a small group ride today with the Crawley and Horsham National Cycle UK group. We were on Meetup and we put our rides on there. There are only 3 riders, including myself today, because it was quite cold, -1, and you can see there was a lot of frost and ice on the roads as well, so obviously not as safe as it could be, but still a lot of fun going out when it's crisp, especially when the sun's out, because that kept us a little bit warmer as well. Literally out of the door, had this minor mechanical situation, an arse-saver mudguard on the back. We'd been on there more than a year underneath that rack, and unfortunately took it off recently to have some mechanical stuff done on the rear hydraulic brakes, and just hastily popped it back on this morning, and I just couldn't get the right position. It was just rubbing inside there. But it actually sits really nicely under the rear rack when it's working, but I just whipped it off. I didn't have the time because I was meeting other riders, so I took it off and then sort of continued on my way without the mudguard, which did end up with some splashback on me, but I didn't mind. It wasn't too bad today with it being quite crisp and icy. So this was just a short trip taking me over to Three Bridges Station, which was the start of this ride. Each week for the National Cycling UK groups for Crawley and Horsham, we just alternate between stations, near to Horsham Station at the swimming pool that's just down the way, and Three Bridges Station. And that means some of the riders come between the 2 stations by train, and it allows us to sort of cover a larger area of a catchment area, because we're quite a small group, but we do have maybe maximum about 30 or so riders, with most weeks having between sort of 7 and 12 or so people going out. This week, because it's so cold, there's only the 3 of us, and the riders led by Bob. Lots of high-vis vests around, shepherding the people of the area around to get them onto 2 buses. It's a bus replacement day because there were some services going on the line, so instead of trains at this Three Bridges station, they were putting people on buses. So there's the little group. That's Derek and Bob. The route took us out through Crawley, and this is an area called Gales Drive. In fact, this is where I went to first school and middle school, here in Gales Drive, and also my children. So 2 generations going through the same school here. This is Three Bridges Middle School. I don't know if it's even called that anymore, actually, or it's a primary. But back in the day, we would have a primary, which is where you'd go from age sort of 6 or 7 till 10. Then you'd have a middle school, And actually, I think it was one between like 9 and 11 or 12 before you went up to what they called secondary school, even though it was your third school. So I think they tried to do away with those in the 90s, but this one kind of survived the cull of the middle schools. And you can see that classic 50s style shopping parade there with the new town in Crawley. And this is the Crawley town centre, which is having a kind of a refurb at the moment. Road was closed, but we kind of scooted around because the cycle path was a little bit icy. That's the cycle path there, but we kept off it and stayed on the road. Signs of the gradual decline of the UK here on the right hand side with our old post office. I think they still use it for sort of deliveries out the back and vans and gear, but the original old post office here has moved into one of our county malls and left behind the old building here. I could never understand the logic. Why wouldn't you actually put the station and the post office together in one area? So you'd get trains coming down with all the mail and post. They'd come straight out to the depot of the post office and then they'd be distributed. Instead, it's about 3/4 of a mile from the station. Just seemed daft not to use like a network of rail to be connected to a hub for post. But Crawley was built in the 1950s, 60s. It was like the car age, and I suppose at that time the post office was modernising. Everything was going, how much can we do in lorry delivery and get away from using the actual trains, which is a shame. So basically the whole route was about 30 miles. We finally got out of the amazing sights and scenes of Crawley high streets, and we're now on the route out to Rusper via Ifield, and the whole route was sort of doing a big loop around Gatwick. So we headed out east and then up to the north, and then eventually came back west again and headed down towards Smallfield at the back end of the loop. So the whole ride we had planes somewhere or other, which is quite interesting actually. Wherever we were, even the coffee stop we were under the flight path as well, so it was good fun. It was a really bright sunny day, so worth getting out for the benefits of seeing some sunshine.
It's a sort of dilemma. On the one hand, if you think that the mind is not material, then it seems impossible to understand how your minds can make your bodies move. We think that the things that we ordinarily think and feel affect us, they move us to act. So they bring about changes in the physical world. But this is very hard to understand if the mind is not itself a physical thing. So if the mind is not a physical thing, then it's hard to understand mental-physical interaction. On the other hand, if mind is a physical thing, it's very hard to understand consciousness. And so we have this dilemma. If it's non-physical, you can't understand interaction, and if it's physical, then you can't understand consciousness.
So we hit a very, very icy patch here, a little steep hill section with some streams and running water sort of coming over the road, but we did okay. Just a little bit of loss of traction on the rear wheel. We went very slow and steady, so it made it a bit more of an adventure, really doing something interesting and going so slow as to not actually cause ourselves any terrible pain if we came flying off due to the ice.
Among the many anniversaries we went through in the year just ended was the centenary of the Pips, which introduced BBC radio news bulletins. The 5 short beeps, followed by the 6, slightly longer one, can still be heard on Radio 4 and the World Service. The Pips were first heard in 1924, and were not simply an introduction to the news. They performed a vital service, linking BBC headquarters in London by wire to the official Greenwich time signal, so that the public could be assured of telling the time with precision accuracy.
So we're just approaching the Royal Ellswood Lakes, I think they're called, near the old Ellswood Asylum, I think it was called originally. And the Lakeside Cafe is on here, so they do various hot snacks, the usual sort of bacon sandwiches, sausage, baps, coffee, ice cream as well. They had the ice cream signs out everywhere, but a little bit chilly at kind of -1. And very busy as well, but we easily found somewhere to sit down on the bench, lots of dog walkers moving through, and a great stop. And actually not going inside when it's this cold was quite a good thing to do, because you don't get that kind of mid-ride warm up in a cafe, come back out and you're frozen again. We just sat outside, and actually my feet that had gone a bit numb warmed up okay out here, and I just had my coffee. It was great fun. Just a little chat stop and opportunity to rest up, take in the view.
And the furthest out we can see in our universe is really the distance that light has travelled in that 14 billion years. So when we look at the furthest objects away from us, we're looking back in time, and the furthest we can see are the objects that were very early on after the Big Bang. And roughly speaking, when you do the calculations, that's something like 14 or of order 14 billion light years away. And for some context, a light year is an extremely long distance. So it takes 8 minutes for light to reach us from the sun. So that's 8 light minutes. To the nearest star other than the sun, it's about 4 years, so 4 light years. So the universe is roughly tens of billions of light years across, so huge.
Bronze Age cups have been recovered from a nearby burial site containing charred human remains. With the ghosts and the dusk gathering, it's probably time to head back. The low sun will have enough candle power to usher you home if you've timed it right.
So these pogies did really well, keeping my hands warm inside there. You just got like these two little buckets that you put your hands in on top of your hoods. Problem I think I've got is my hoods are like elephantine in size. They're like really pudgy and high up and stocky with massively sort of rubbery ends on the head of them. And the problem with that for the pogies is that they don't quite sort of stretch over them so easily. The one on the right hand side sort of drifted down quite a lot. Quite irritating when you're going along and you're finding it's just drifted to the point where you're getting just enough wind into that pocket and you're going, why have I even got this on the bike? Why am I cycling around with this if it's drifting down? But it worked out in the end, and overall I had warm hands the whole time inside there with quite thin gloves, so you feel like you've got good connection to the bike without those thick rubbery spaceman gloves on. So yeah, great. And here we are back at Three Bridges, and I just sort of shot through past the Three Bridges station and headed off back through Three Bridges and into the centre of Crawley and back home. So really great Crawley CTC, or also known as now UK Cycling, and we're on Meetup. Just search for sort of Horsham and Crawley cycling on Meetup, and you'll see our rides every Sunday starting between sort of 9:30 and 10. This one started at 10 today, and we head over either cycling out of Horsham or cycling out of Three Bridges, so you can sort of pick depending on which area you are.